Hello, and welcome back to Tiny Artist TV. Today is going to be video 7 in the AuGhost Daily Drawing Challenge series, and today's prompts are going to be repulse, flee, and zigzag. Now, I am aware that this video is a little later than the days that I'm drawing, and that's just probably how the back end of this is going to be. As I spoke to in the last video, trying to do these on time every day and then upload them on the day that they're finished it's not going to happen. So AuGhost is going to spill over into September a little bit, but I do still plan on at least attempting to draw every single one of these prompts. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with today's video. So our first prompt for today is repulse, and I immediately kind of scrambled because there are several directions that I could have taken this, because repulse has several applicable definitions. To repulse, you could be pushing something away from you, or the thing itself could be repulsing. And so I went with that latter, just sort of classic nasty ghost direction, because of course with flee and zigzag, those are a little more explicit in a inspiration track to take with those. So yeah, for repulse, this is sort of similar to the depression ghost that I did, just sort of a nasty, gnarly creature, well, ghost spirit. And unfortunately, because I do like to make little backstories for my ghosties, this is the spirit of someone who in life was typically seen as an outcast, someone who was repulsed or was sort of shunned by large groups of people. And kind of like a Quasimodo situation. Not to say that Quasimodo was quote-unquote repulsing, but if you've watched The Hunchback of Notre Dame, you know what I'm talking about. That sort of like mentality around like, oh, this person's different, so we have to exclude them, or this person looks a little like quote-unquote unnormal, so we're going to just push them to the edge of society and forget about them and leave them to the wolves, kind of thing. So that's the idea behind this first ghost here. And I was almost tempted to make a before picture to accommodate this drawing, because obviously this person didn't look anything remotely like this in life. This ghost is basically a like, oh, you thought I was ugly, you thought I was disgusting, I'll show you ugly, I'll show you disgusting, and just becoming the most grotesque version of itself. I restrained myself from doing a before picture simply because I don't have time for that right now. Maybe someday in the future I'll revisit this and do a sort of, actually, oh, you know what, maybe I can do that for my October video series. Do a what did these ghosts look like when they were alive sort of thing, because there's a few that obviously look very different now than what they would have looked like in life. I don't know if that's a strong enough idea. If you like that idea, comment down below, and if I get, I don't know, 5 comments saying that you would watch that as a series, I'll consider doing it. But this is pretty much the end of where we are for the ideation of this particular sketch. Everything else is just fleshing it out. So this is prompt number 21, I believe, which is repulse. Next on the docket, prompt number 22, is flee. Now, I had initially thought of doing some sort of like Scooby-Doo-esque feeling for this ghost, because when I think of flee, I think of like running away from a ghost, and I think of like the bit where I don't know how many of my audience is familiar with the old versions of Scooby-Doo, but where there's a hallway and there's a bunch of doors, and they're like just all the characters in the monster are zipping through the different doors, and eventually they all smash in the middle of the hallway. But I wanted to keep it simple, so instead I went with another kind of horror movie poster idea where you see one of the victims who maybe the main character may just be like one of the characters that gets killed off in like the first 10 minutes of the movie, and then the main antagonist, which at first is just this sort of malevolent spirit that looks like a man. I do change the design to make it more almost like I pulled inspiration from several places. So the inspiration from the victim's expression is obviously it's very Clockwork Orange with the eyes open. And then I had actually recently watched a video on Instagram where people were making their own paper mache masks, and I was inspired by that, like the idea of like old homemade masks showing up in a lot of old horror movies being very creepy. I also kind of thought of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I pulled in some of the stitching from that, which obviously in Texas Chainsaw the masks are made out of skin, which again is another common thread, another common feature in a lot of these older horror. So I'm thinking this is kind of like Saw era 2000s, like 2010s horror, Slaughterhouse, Grindhouse, that sort of era, and just sort of a, like, you know what you're getting in for with the cover. It's gonna be a little psychological, it's gonna be a little creepy, maybe a little gory, and maybe a little hopeless in that, like, this villain is obviously very powerful and you're not kind of sure what powers it has. It's just right there, not even hiding, grabbing this particular person. And I just kind of had, I don't know, I like the last one that I did, and so I had a lot of fun doing this one as well, just kind of getting into, you know, spooky season is right around the corner, and I just thought that this was kind of a fun way to execute, instead of, again, having to have a bunch of characters run across the screen, just having this idea of this warning, just flee. Like, that's the idea here, is that this is basically it's a horror movie where a group of kids go somewhere they're not supposed to go, and then some entity is pursuing them, and someone has told them to flee, and because they're young and stubborn and think they're indestructible, they just don't, and various things happen. So this is prompt number 22. I'm just like, I'm so hee about it. I don't know. I'm getting my spooky bones are jiggling with excitement. Last prompt for today's video is going to be prompt number 23, which is zigzag. So always have to have at least one lighthearted one in the bunch here. So zigzag, I was inspired to do something kind of in the vein of a Danny Phantom-esque, like, ghost superhero. That's it. She's a ghost who was struck by lightning, and then through her, like, afterlife ghostly powers, has the ability to control lightning and move through storms, and she uses her ghostly superpowers to solve crimes. This one is, like I said, very simple, very lighthearted, a little palate cleanser, if you will, to lead into whatever is awaiting us in the next video. So, yeah. After I added the name to make this sort of like a comic book page cover, there was a lot of line art happening and a lot of overlapping places, so I decided to just add some simple color to make things a little easier to read. No pun intended, like visually make things easier to read, and add a little bit of shading to help her pop out from the lettering in the back, and then I changed the background color to this sort of like soft superhero red. And here is number 23, Zigzag. And that brings us to the end of today's video, video number 7 in the AuGhost series. We are in the home stretch. There are only like 8 more prompts left to do, and then we will be done, which, like I said, it is going to roll over into September, but I will have finished it, with the exception of number 13, whichever one it was that I missed. That was some some mess, and no one suggested anything yet, so that will probably remain undone. But that's all I have for you for this video. Until next time, thanks for tuning in, and have a weird day.